There are two fish, I think, which are of royalty. One of them is the turbo, and the second one is Dover sole. It's one of those fish that has been around and very popular for generations. But before we get to the Dover sole, I'm going to teach you how to make pomme chateau. We're using the pomme chateau as a garnish. It's a classic garnish also for Dover sole. And it's just really boiled potatoes. We're going to boil them with a little bit of herbs. In this case, we have some thyme, some bay leaf, some garlic cloves to add a little bit of flavor to that. I'm going to crush that garlic clove, get all that flavor out, and some peppercorns. Of course, those will be taken out. We're going to straight after the potatoes are cooked, and we want to cook our potatoes where there's no resistance. And you know that when it's a raw potato, I can barely stick my knife in there without it sticking. So there's a lot of resistance to that. Of course, when it's cooked, we're going to be able to pierce the flesh of the potato and pull the knife out without it sticking in the knife. So that's what we call no resistance. So historically, a pomme chateau has to have 7 sides, 6 of them equal, and one of them a little broader so that it can actually sit flat on your plate. I remember when I first learned how to do this and the difficulty of actually doing a chateau potato and being watched over the shoulder by my mentor, Roland Hennin, which is a wonderful French chef from Lyon, but an imposing figure. And to have him standing over your shoulder while you're trying to turn 150 pomme chateau, don't want to go there. This is a red bliss potato. We would never, ever use a baking potato or an Idaho potato for this. We always want to use a dense potato. Red Bliss, Yukon Gold are all good potatoes to use for this preparation. It does, let me just say this, it does create a lot of potato waste. So if you're against that and you don't really care about the way it looks or recreating something that's historic like a pomme chateau, then you can just peel it, and that's fine as well. But when I make a pomme chateau, I use what we call a beak paring knife because it allows me to hold it in my hand and do that without a lot of effort. So turning potatoes, of course, the potato is a vegetable, so we also turn carrots, we turn turnips, we turn rutabagas, turn beets. Anything that is dense enough to turn, we've been known to turn. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, one flat side. So we go ahead and bring them over to our burner. Just turn that on, let them simmer. They shouldn't take more than 15 minutes once they come to a simmer. Of course, we always start our potatoes in cold water and let them come up. We never would ever put potatoes in hot water or boiling water. That makes them that much more difficult to cook. Now, I'm going to show you 2 ways of removing the skin from our Dover sole. One, fairly easy. Look at that guy, huh? Flatfish, 2 eyes on top, dark top side, which faces up into the sky or into the sun, and then, of course, the bottom, which is much lighter. So what we want to do here is to release the skin from the skeleton. Okay, so one way to do that is to dip it in hot water. And I'm just waiting for that skin to cook a little bit and then it'll separate from the skeleton. There it goes, you see right there. You can see how that's done. You can see the bones there. And then we can just lift it off. Very simple. This we're gonna need the aid of a towel. I'm just grabbing it with my fingers underneath. Once you get it started, it comes right off. Now you can do other small sole like this, petroli sole, lemon sole, in terms of flatfish. That'll work with the same technique of peeling the skin off. A larger flatfish is a little more complicated, a little more difficult. The skin is much thicker, obviously, because it's a bigger fish. And to be quite honest with you, I've never really tried to skin a halibut or a turbo using this method. We've always filleted it because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those fillets off of those fish. We're never cooking them whole. As we're going to do with our Dover sole, we're going to cook it whole. So that's one right there. Now, the other one, which is kind of the way I learned, we didn't have the hot water next door because in our fish butchery in the kitchen is a very cold place, so we didn't have stoves nearby. We would just begin by scraping that same skin until it started to let loose, as you can see. Takes a little more effort, but this is the way we were doing it in our kitchen for fish butchery. Resulting the same way. So either way you find easy, you want to bring a pot of water up to a boil, or if you just want to scrape that tail until you catch some skin, it's going to work fine. Now realize I'm working on a piece of parchment paper because I want to keep my board as clean as possible. And this does have scales on it, so some of the scales are coming off, as you can see in my hand, and onto the paper. Okay, so we have our two Dover soles peeled, and we're going to trim them, but let me clean up a little bit here. Always working as clean as possible. It's a good habit to work on. We always say clean as you go, which means exactly that. As you're working, you're continuously cleaning, putting things away, taking things in the dishwasher, wiping things down, putting things in the garbage can. Whatever it needs to happen, we're always cleaning as we go. Okay, now we're going to trim off the dorsal fins here. Have our pair of kitchen shears. And you can see right along here where the flesh meets those fins, and that's very important to watch that line. It's very simple to see, it's obvious. You just take a pair of scissors and cut up that side. Follow it around. There's that little piece. And then we're just going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Remove any of the liver or pancreas that we have here. And then we're going to go ahead, we have a very heavy chef's knife here. We're going to go ahead and just cut the head right off here. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead and trim the tail the same way. Let me turn that, make sure they're angled the same. Perfect. And there we have our Dover sole ready to be sauteed. We're going to go ahead and saute a Dover sole here. Very simple. It's a fish that has a very firm flesh, very meaty. And therefore, it's a pretty easy fish to cook. When I say that, it's not going to flake apart as some whitefish might do. They become very tender, very fragile. Dover sole has a lot of It's in other words, it's very meaty, so it's not gonna fall apart on you. We're gonna dredge it in a little bit of flour, and this time we're gonna cook in clarified butter. We're using a non-stick saute pan. We're going to get our fire up here again. Clarified butter is whole butter, and we taught how to clarify this in our first masterclass. Now, you don't have to use clarified butter. It becomes a cooking fat, but it does add a little bit of flavor in this sense. And I just really like the way, especially when we use flour, butter and flour react. It's kind of that same kind of idea when we're spreading butter on our bread. We like those flavors. So we're going to take our sole. We're going to make sure we dry it off. Again, we want as little moisture as we can. Dredge them in flour. Again, this is all-purpose flour, so nothing unique, nothing you probably don't have at home or certainly in your restaurants. I'm going to go ahead and flip my board over to a clean side so that when I do fillet my fish, I have that opportunity to work off a clean surface. We want to make sure that any excess flour is removed. Just patting it there. Very, very thin coat. This just gives a little thin layer of crispiness that I like. Okay, you can see it's smoking. So we're gonna go ahead and lay our sole in. And remember, always away from us. You hear it right away. And here we go. I'm going to turn my fire down. This one, we're going to turn it down to low, medium instead of medium. We want it to cook relatively slowly because it is a big piece of fish and it has bones in it. So the bones, in this case, are fairly cold. Remember, we took it right off of the ice. So that bone portion needs to get up to that proper temperature in order to make sure that the meat around it is cooked as well. So it's going to take a little longer. There are 3 brown butter sauces which are traditionally served with Dover sole or a different kind of sole. One is Beurre Amandine, and Beurre Genevoise. So we are all going to start that with butter that we browned. And then we're going to finish that. Beurre is made with butter, parsley, and lemon juice. Amandine with the addition of almonds. We're going to do those 2 today. And then Genevoise has capers, lemon, and croutons in it. Okay. This requires patience in what we're doing. Okay, so you can see when I'm penetrating my potato now, it goes pretty much all the way through and it's falling off of the knife as opposed to sticking to the knife, which is very important. And probably another 5 minutes on those and they'll be ready to go. You notice I like to do this basting. It helps accelerate the cooking process. Now this works really well with petroli sole, lemon sole, any of the small sole that are available depending on part of the country you're in. We have petroli sole here on the West Coast, on the East Coast, lemon sole is available, gray sole. Give that too. beautiful brown there. You can see how this sauteing at a lower heat doesn't create so much splatter. The sole is very dense, so there's not a lot of water in that. And then we put the flour on it as well, which is soaked up a little bit of the water, so we don't have that kind of violent action that we had with the salmon or other dishes we may do that have more water in them. See, I'm just penetrating again. One of the ways to tell how your fish is cooking, especially in a Dover sole or a firm fish like this, is to be able to penetrate it with your knife. And if you can see, when it's raw, it kind of indents. And the knife tip doesn't really penetrate it unless I put a lot of pressure on it. Whereas opposed to a piece of fish that's cooked, the knife will flow right through it. In the same way that we talked about our potatoes and the resistance of that with a knife, the sole or fish is the same way. I love also the Dover sole because it's almost impossible to overcook. But you never ever want to undercook Dover sole because it won't come off the bone. And part of that fear of every server in any restaurant that's doing Dover sole in the dining room is that the fish comes out of the kitchen a little undercooked because it is so embarrassing when a server is trying to fillet his Dover sole for you and he can't get it off the bone. This is the thinner side. Remember I talked to you about the thinner and thicker side? This is the thinner side, which is the white part of the fish, or the fish that sits on the bottom of the ocean. Very gentle cooking process here. Okay. We're done now. So we're going to go ahead and take our potatoes so that we can coat them with just a little bit of butter. They're beautiful, still intact. And the aromas, again, the aromas coming off here are very special. You got a little bit of that thyme. You're starting to get the spice from the peppercorns. A little bit of that sweet garlic now that the garlic's cooked. The thyme, the bay leaf. Okay, there we go. Now we can put whole butter in here, if you like whole sweet butter, which I do, and or a little bit of clarified, or both in this case. Remember, clarified butter has a more intense butter flavor than whole butter. We'll season that with a little bit of salt. We're going to go ahead and make our brown butter sauce, or beurre meunière. Get our casserole hot. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and fillet our sole. I like to use a spoon. I'm going to take it right down the vertebrae, and then I'm just going to go out. And you see how easy that is. And this is the bottom or the lighter part of the fillet. And you don't even have to turn it over. You know why? Because this bone is going to come right out. Let me start from the back. Here we go. Okay. You see how easy it is to to move your Dover sole around. It's a very dense fish. Our pomme chateau, beautifully turned, classically prepared. Yeah, you want to be careful not to heat it up too much, because if it's too hot, the brown butter will burn almost immediately. You want to put the butter in there and actually start it to sizzle. The milk solids are what's going to brown and give it that kind of aroma of nuttiness that we like so much. I'm making a little extra here because I want to turn our beurre Meunier sauce into a beurre amandine. What I'm going to do is, once my butter is the color and the aroma that I want, I'm going to arrest the cooking with the lemon juice. You can see that start to get a little brown around the edge. Get a nice little froth on top. The milk solids are what's browning and giving it that nutty flavor. See, now we have a beautiful brown butter, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze my lemon juice into it. Parsley, and the aroma here is just magnificent. If I want to turn that into almondine, I can go ahead and just put my almonds in there. And I want to use raw almonds, so they have a chance to roast in the butter and then taking on that roasted almond flavor. I'm just going to drop a little more butter in there to stop it just so slightly. So this is our Dover sole Meunier. And I'm going to turn it into almondine real quickly here in a moment. If we were making Grenoble, the almonds would, of course, we'd start with the brown butter. Then we'd arrest the cooking with the lemon juice, add the croutons, the lemon segments, and capers. And that's what we have, then be almondine. Our royal Dover sole, fit for a queen.